Good evening, everybody. Well, it's evening here. Welcome to another edition of the Dig Route. This is episode 11. We have a lot to get to today. We have another Fansider going to be checking in regarding the Buffalo Bills. But we want to start with what's been going on in our country, what has happened recently with another death in the Black community at the hands of a police officer. This time, just an absolutely disgusting show of what happened in that incident. I took the weekend off of social media this weekend because I can't personally. I couldn't take what was going on. Just everything, seeing the whole situation unfold was too much for me, and I had to take the weekend off of social media. But Justin, how are you holding in there?
Yeah, I'm doing all right, man. I did not take the weekend off of social media. Maybe I should have because it was a trip and a half. Unfortunately, it was disturbing to watch and be and to see all that going on throughout the entire country, not just what's going on in Minneapolis, which is disturbing enough as it is. I've only seen one murder in my life, and somebody showed me the Saddam Hussein getting hung video when I was in high school one time, which was a really weird video to watch, but I watched it. This is the second time I've ever seen anything like that, and that's an uncomfortable sight for sure. So we are a football podcast. We are not a social political activist podcast, but we wanted to talk about the scope of this through the NFL and through the Raiders specifically. Their owner, Mark Davis, son of Al Davis, put out a statement a couple days this morning, actually, late last night. So I wanted to read it real quick. To watch a man be murdered by a uniformed police officer kneeling on the man's throat for 9 minutes, while 3 uninformed police officers either assisted or stood by watching is disturbing in too many ways. To be honest, I'm surprised that the reassuring violence hasn't been much worse. Emotions are high, the temperature is hot, and there's static in the air. But burning your brother's house down is ultimately not the answer. Not only do we have to tell people there is something wrong, we have to come up with solutions. That's the challenge in front of us, not only as Americans, but as human beings. Great statement.
Great.
And this is coming from a guy who was also extremely vocal in 2017 with social issues in the past. Mark Davis. I do commend a lot of owners and GMs, and when they come out and speak to stuff like this, just saying that all this is bigger than football. Like this is all, yeah, putting the light on it. I think is a very big thing for them, for sure.
I think
Steve Kerr does it great too.
it's definitely a step. I think overall, words only do so much at some point. Like this has just been a continuous
Yeah.
happening. Like it keeps happening and it keeps happening. And I at some point I'm at a loss because I just I don't I'm a problem solver and I don't know what the solution is. Um, so I think from me, as powerful and as strong as those words are, they're words,
Yeah.
and they only go so far. I think as beautifully as beautiful a job that communications official did in writing that statement. Um, you know, I guess I want to see more. Like I want to see action. I want to see Mark Davis taking the next step towards some kind of solution in the matter, because bringing about a problem that we unfortunately haven't been able to solve only moves the needle so much. And I think it's a step in the right direction, especially from an NFL owner. I do want to say that because the NFL has been one of the more conservative leagues from a social justice and social impact stance. They try to stay away as best they can. I think the biggest show of support was in, I forget which year it was, but it was the year Trump called Kaepernick a son of a bitch. I think it was 2016.
It's 2016. Yeah.
And they had all of the player or the owners with the players taking knees and whatnot, but like nothing really came of that after. Like, it's a show of support, but it only goes so far. So I would want to see more from the owners.
Well, Mark Davis was one of the extremely vocal owners back in 2016-17 with the kneeling, saying when the NFL went about the whole fining thing and saying that this is not approved. Mark Davis said, "I'm not going to fine you. You go about your business. You do this in a respectful manner. That's all I care about. You believe in what you believe in, and I'm right here with you. Just be respectful about it." And that's a step.
Right. You're absolutely right.
That most in the past, for sure. Most of them have flat out said, I will fine you," which is no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But we wanted to touch base on that real quick, and we're going to shift on gears now to talk about some freaking football, huh?
We want to give everyone a break. We want to be the podcast that you come to get relaxed and away from what's been going on in the world. So let's do that, Justin. What do you got on the agenda today?
Man, I don't know if you've been off social media for a little bit. George Kittle came out this weekend, and George Kittle wants to get paid. George Kittle wants some big boy money. Apparently, he doesn't just want top tight end money. George Kittle wants money. Now, I just want to.
Did you give a number? Or did you just say I want money?
No, I'm just saying he wants money. You could pull up his quote. It's fine.
Here's the thing with George Kittle. I love him as a player. Like, I think he's very exciting. He's a do-it-all player for the Niners, but he's kind of screws himself this year in any of those arbitrations or negotiations by talking about how much he likes blocking. Receivers don't block like he blocks. He's basically
Hines Ward blocked like he blocked.
What's that?
Hines Ward blocked like he blocked.
Well, not really. He didn't. Hines Ward didn't block on the end of the line and block like solo block defensive ends.
Hines Ward is also dirty as fuck, but that's another conversation.
Did the crackback blocks and all that. Like he, I'll say 99.9% of receivers don't have the responsibility that George Kittle has blocking, and he kind of screwed himself with that because that he has no argument for being a wide receiver. So this kind of reminds me of the Jimmy Graham situation a while back with the Saints, where he had a dispute for the franchise tag on whether he should be considered a tight end or a wide receiver. Now, Jimmy Graham had a leg to stand on because he didn't block for shit. he was a receiver, and that was pretty much
never did. Yeah.
So the dispute came to an end when I think the NFL asked what meeting room do you go to, and he said tight end meeting room, and that was it. He was a tight end. I mean, George Kittle, like, he's important enough to that team, and he played a big role when they started running the ball. But I think because he's such a team player, he didn't put up the stats necessarily towards the end of the season when Shanahan moved more towards that rushing offense and rode Raheem Mostert through the playoffs. I think didn't George Kittle only have like one or two catches?
He had a handful, yeah.
So, he kind of screwed himself in that respect. Is now he kind of locked himself into a tight end contract. So I don't know what the Niners are going to do because they have a lot of guys they need to pay.
They do have a lot of guys they need to pay. They pay their quarterback a pretty penny already. They overpay their quarterback, but besides that, maybe not. So to put it into context, the top tight ends in the league, Hunter Henry, in terms of salary, not ranking. I'm sorry. I just want to clear. I saw your face real quick. I was like, oh, I don't want him to think different of me. So we got Hunter Henry making about $10.6 a year, Austin Hooper making $10.5, Travis Kelce $9, Kyle Rudolph $9, Rob Gronkowski $9.
That's insane that Travis Kelce is only making $9 million a year. That is ridiculous.
I like Austin Hooper. I think that's an egregious amount of money for a team that has a tight end who I think actually has mild star potential.
Yeah, I mean, that's free agency. That that like.
But why do you don't need him? You can go get Tyler Eifert. Honestly, if you want just another tight end, go get Tyler Eifert and just plug him in there. That's for $3 million, and you get 3 more inches in height.
I agree with you from an asset standpoint. It doesn't make sense, but the Browns are in a unique situation where they have a quarterback on a rookie contract, and they can take the money that they should be paying for a quarterback and put it into positions that they don't necessarily need to. So they aren't really in a position where they can spend that kind of money on a hood ornament of a car and of an offense, but they also have the cap flexibility to do so. But the fact that I was just looking it up, George Kittle's making $735,000.
It's a fifth, sixth round draft pick, man. I mean, like, he was not supposed to be this guy. But like, credit to Kirk Ferentz and the tight end machine that is the University of Iowa. He just, yeah, produces and produces. I mean, like, Noah Fant just came out of Iowa. TJ Hawkinson just came out of Iowa. There are 3 soon-to-be prolific tight ends in the NFL, all from one university. It's not a coincidence here.
No, you're absolutely right.
And I feel like looking at not that TJ Hawkinson and Noah Fant were bad prospects at all. They were excellent prospects. But I do think that watching the progression of George Kittle did something to their draft stock. Personally, I do.
Oh, you're not wrong. That always tends to happen when there's some kind of success at a certain position. The scouts automatically look at that position the next year, and so
Yeah, like Saquon Barkley, Miles Sanders reap those benefits because they want to see that next Penn State running back. All right, batter up. So the attention is there, and yeah. So I think both of them are first round draft picks in large part because of George Kittle. So I think they should thank him just a wee bit.
just a little bit.
It could have been second round picks, but still, yeah.
When they get their second contracts, they could take Kittle out for a nice steak dinner. But
there's the Kittle clause in the contract. That's what it is.
When it comes to George Kittle, there's something about that offense and that unpredictability of what Kyle Shanahan is going to do, and this just goes to show how good of a coach Kyle Shanahan is that you just never know who he's going to feature that week or for a stretch of weeks. Like towards in the playoffs and towards the end of the season, they really didn't pass the ball at all, and that's just an interesting thing where if let's say they make that the main offense this year is going to be just rushing the football. Like what happens at what happens to are you going to be paying a tight end $17-18 million a year to block?
Yeah, because it's that intrinsic value of him, because he's giving you that extra bonus. It's like why people are justifying the Christian McCaffrey contract, because he can run and catch. It's because Kittle can catch and block. That's why he deserves that money. Because if you're willing to pay, I'm trying to think of like the highest lineman contract off the top of my head isn't like, I don't know, $16 million, 15 in that ballpark.
They're up towards 20 now.
They're up towards 20. Okay, you're paying a guy $20 million to block. So why can't I pay a guy $18 million to block and catch? Why is that so egregious? You know what I'm saying?
I totally get your point. I think it's a fair point.
In a league, and I want to be clear because I did not agree with the Christian McCaffrey contract. I would agree with George Kittle being paid because a great tight end is so hard to find. And if you have that, man, hold on by the freaking clutches, because you could see what happens when they stay healthy. Look at Rob Gronkowski, man. I mean, like, you have an elite tight end, it does wonders for your team. Travis Kelce does wonders for your team. Every team in the AFC and NFC Conference Championship had a great tight end. Mark Andrews is a great tight end. I'm sorry, he was in divisional, but you understand where I'm going here. And Seattle does it too when they did it with Will Disley, and Will Disley went down, and then Jacob Hollister stepped up. Jacob Hollister was another Patriot product. Yeah, man.
Yeah, you're absolutely right when it comes to the value of tight ends. And sorry, I was just.
No, you're good. Pay up. I think that's one that you have to pay, especially because you don't pay any of your wide receivers really. Like, yes, you're going to pay Deebo Samuel when time comes, but that's 3 years away.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yes, you're going to pay Raheem Mostert, but you're only going to pay Raheem Mostert. God, $7 million max, I think, would be his next contract, and that's a great contract for him.
Oh yeah.
That'd be fantastic. But they're not going to give a 28-year-old, 27-year-old running back more money than that. Like, it's not going to happen.
No, and with the Niners too, like that whole defensive line is, first round picks that they don't want to lose. Like part of the reason
I
they
mean, you could lose Solomon Thomas. He's not that good.
yeah, but when it comes, they got rid of DeForest Buckner,
Yeah.
they can't pay everybody. So
Yeah.
who are they probably, they're going to keep Bosa, obviously, and
Have to.
I don't know who else they would keep. But off the top of my head, but
Quan, they love Quan Alexander as a linebacker. Like, they're obsessed with Quan Alexander. Every time you watch a Niners broadcast while he was injured last year, they mentioned that numerous times.
right, and they're already paying D Ford, you know,
Yeah.
so like he's already getting paid, and then you got Bosa coming up. That's going to be too many people that they can pay, and you're already paying a quarterback top dollar. So,
And Eric Armstead
right, so that
on the
that
opposite side. Yeah.
get rid of DeForest Buckner because they couldn't pay him. And I mean, Kittle, I think is going to get franchise tagged because you said Hunter Henry. I think he's like 10.5, and
Yeah.
one of the highest paid.
I think he's on a tag, Hunter Henry.
He is, yeah. He got tagged.
Yeah.
So I mean, I would tag him for 10, or 11, and if he's looking for higher than that. I think it would just be absolutely insane to pay him though, like wide receiver one money. Like I think that's just a little bit too much for him. Like as great a player as he is, like I don't want
What would you be comfortable paying him at?
12, 13.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I'd pay him. I'd pay him as high as $16 million a year.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. It depends what the cap is and what my situation is. Like,
Yeah. Well, if I'm the Niners right now in this situation and forecasting everything I have right now, I would go that route.
but like, can you physically pay him 16 million? Like, is there within the salary cap that much money to pay him that? I guess they'd have to move things and make things work, and the cap is always flexible. But it's just something to think about is what happens when we get to that point.
Who would you share your top 3 tight ends in the league?
I mean, it'd probably be Kelsey number 1, Kittle 2, and then 3 is really up for debate. I think there's like a bunch of probably Ertz.
Okay. Yeah, because I would unequivocally give it to Zach Ertz. Yeah, I would say 100%. With that being said, do you consider Zach Ertz thrives on being a receiver?
Mm-hmm.
He is a wide receiver. He catches almost 100 balls a year consistently. Do you think he should be considered more of a wide receiver at this point? Like, think about it. He is the Eagles' lone weapon, right?
Yeah.
You think Zach Ertz deserves to be paid more than $8.5 million?
Probably.
The answer is hell yeah. Zach Ertz deserves that money that you just offered up to George Kittle. Zach Ertz deserves that $12-13 million a year salary, 100% for everything he does to that team. The problem is that he's not going to get it being 30 years old.
Right. Well,
Travis Kelce only makes 9.3. He's 31. This contract's up in what, 2 years?
We're getting the concept of legacy deals, which happened with a lot of teams. Like Kelsey's going to get a legacy deal. Like he's going to get paid more in his next contract than he should because of the success that he had previously, which is the worst thing to do. And the thing that I think has separated New England in the past is they get rid of people 1 year early than 1 year too late. And like they never pay somebody based on what they've done previously. The obvious example of that is Tom Brady. Like they were only going to ever pay him what he could do, and what he could do for the team. They were never going to pay him because he won 6 Super Bowls. Like that's just their style, and I think that's a successful way to build a team. So I'm curious to see what the Chiefs are going to do after they give, because Mahomes obviously is next for that team.
Oh yeah, he's going to hit.
I don't know. Probably going to get.
I feel like it's going to come close. It's going to lean towards 40.
He's gonna get 40. He'll get 4 years, maybe 5 years, 200 million, maybe 210.
That's such a ridiculous number to talk about in football. Like we're talking like an NBA salary right now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's getting.
Yeah.
the difference with the NFL salaries, and we can have a whole discussion on NFL salary or contract structure. That 5-year deal is going to be really a 2-year deal, and they can get out of it in the third. So we'll see what happens with all of that. But Kelsey's going to get paid again. He's going to get paid close to Austin Hooper money, I think, because of what he's done.
So much money.
Didn't happen. I think we both can agree on that, but I think we can both.
Oh yeah.
Going to happen is the next contract. They couldn't be in a position to say, why are you going to let the best tight end in football go? And they're going to cave to that pressure and re-sign him.
The Colts paid Jack Doyle $7 million a year.
Yeah, Jack had one good year with Andrew Luck. That's the Andrew Luck.
Oh my God. I also forgot how old Jack Doyle is. 30 years old. Holy shit. You've been that middling for that long?
Yeah, I mean, just think about it. Like with some of these players that don't develop until later, like they get drafted at 22 or 23. Then first contract is 4 years. That's 27. They probably get a minimal 2 to 3 year extension after that, and then they're 30. Like that. For those guys that don't get drafted young and in the first round, like they're really putting themselves at a disadvantage. I think that's maybe what happens with Ertz. Because how old is he now?
He's 30.
Right. And I don't remember
he got a new contract in 2016. He actually got a huge contract in 2016.
Because he was drafted in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
So he was drafted when he was 23. So he was an older player. That's why when we look at like team building, younger guys, like younger is usually better.
But from a cap standpoint, if you want to like think about it longevity wise, like yes, he's 23 years old, but he could probably play till he's like 35-ish, right? But he's going to keep taking pay cuts over time because he's older, but not because he's less valuable. Like age always plays a huge role into it, like especially in baseball too. What was it in 2018, 2019? They had a ridiculously terrible free agency period, and no teams wanted to sign anybody that was over the age of like 31 years old because there were some statistics that came out. I fucking hate advanced metrics. But there was some dumb stat that came out that said anybody that's over the age of 32 is really no longer valuable in baseball, which is just so fucking false. It's like, no.
Well, I can see that from a standpoint where like there have been baseball contracts where someone who's 28 or 29 signs a 10-year contract and then they're going to be playing until they're 39 or 40, and that's just not the best way to build a team for anybody, is to sign somebody for that long and to have that long of a contract. But I think that's something where the owners may have colluded in that respect. They may have said, we're not doing these big contracts anymore.
Okay, well, in all fairness, I would never give a guy who's 20 years old a 10-year contract. I will give a guy who's 30 years old a 3-year contract. Yeah, man, play until you're 33. You could keep pitching. You could play third base. I don't give a fuck. Like, we'll get back to football in a second. There's a baseball player on the Yankees, DJ LeMahieu. DJ LeMahieu came in second in the MVP voting last year. Nobody wanted to sign him because he was 32 years old. The Yankees got him on the cheap.
Yeah, I mean, and
he's freaking awesome.
You're gonna get those contract, those exceptions to the rule, but the standard rule has been what the metrics show. They don't show a certainty; they show a more likely than not situation. But talking about more likely than not, it is more likely than not that the Buffalo Bills will see themselves in the playoffs again.
Oh, wow. Coming out firing.
We are joined now by our Buffalo Bills Fansider, Reid, Kashmanian. And Reid, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your last name, but welcome on the dig route.
Thank you. Really glad to be here. I got to say, you actually hit it spot on. So,
hey.
Well, I read it on the for putting that out. I appreciate that. But tell us, a little bit about yourself. How did you come to be a fan of the Buffalo Bills? How long have you been following the team?
So I'm from Buffalo, so it's probably number 1, 2, and 4 on the reasons of why I'm a Bills fan. I also like rooting for an underdog, so a team that really doesn't win all that much. So, born in 1990, it was pretty much the last time the Bills were really relevant. Kind of works out that way, and all in the same. And then obviously I did a lot of. I grew up playing hockey, so and then I got into fantasy football, fantasy sports, and then the Bills were always a sneaky team where no one would ever draft Bills players. Yet they always had like 1 or 2 high-profile football players for fantasy. So I've kind of really picked it up into that, and then jumping through tables is always fun. I don't do it that much, but I know a lot of Bills Mafia does.
Oh yeah.
When you say that much, over under 3 times.
Under, shockingly.
Nice. Good for you.
So respectability, I think.
Absolutely.
I think the Bills are one of the most interesting teams this year for me. So I'm a Jets fan, and the AFC East, because of the departure of Tom Brady, is as wide open as it's ever been. And there's a lot of folks that are thinking that with Josh Allen's year that he had last year, can he take another step forward and the Bills take the division? What are your thoughts on the division now that Tom Brady is out of it?
So I guess I can go team by team here because I think that's the only real logical way of doing it. Um, I think the Patriots. I think I said it 2 years ago. I write for Rasball and I do a little podcasting there with him. I think I said 2 years ago that this would have been a year to tank for Trevor Lawrence. It was right after he blew out Alabama in the national title game, and everyone's, oh, who's going to tank for Trevor 2 years from now? And the Patriots were kind of that thing. It was the timing of Tom Brady's contract. Josh McDaniels was always in or out. It was wishy-washy whether he was even going to be still the offensive coordinator there. Um, I think their schedule was really front loaded. I think it's why their defense put up historic numbers last year in the first 9 or 10 games. But if you split the season in half, their defense actually got pretty shredded in the second half. Similar to a little bit to how the year before the Denver Broncos won the Super Bowl with Peyton Manning. If you break down Peyton Manning's season, first half he was unstoppable. He started off the year, opening game was like 7 touchdowns. Second half of the year, he was an absolute just tire fire. He was garbage, but no one really talked about it. And then the following year, he had to get carried by the defense. Um, the Patriots, Jared Stidham, I have no faith in, none whatsoever. Belichick could be the greatest coach of all time. You're not fixing Jared Stidham ain't the answer. Brian Hoyer isn't fixing anything. That team's primed to win 5 to 6 games this year, in my estimation. The Jets, don't take it the wrong way, but Adam Gase is one of those I will second mortgage against them no matter what. I'll also last year they never went further than the East Coast or the Eastern time zone for any games. That's obviously going to change. I know you guys have talked about in previous recordings. The AFC East had a lot harder schedule this year compared to last year. Miami is the only team that I actually think is a threat to the Bills this year for the division. I know that sounds crazy to think about they were tanking last year. But yeah, I think they're probably the strongest competition. The Bills, you said it before, it all comes down to Josh Allen. It comes down to whether he becomes the exception or the rule. Anybody who looks at any of the numbers will tell you that Josh Allen is not the answer. He has to be an exception to the rule in terms of CPOE, in terms of completion percentage, accuracy down the field. He doesn't really have it still. He just kind of improvises, and that's not really a sustainable way to win. So I think the Bills, they're the betting favorite right now, and I think that's correct. I think they might get in based on the fact that every other team's kind of in shambles in the division.
I think those are all fair points, and it does really rest on the arm of Josh Allen. But I think what I respect of what the Bills have done the past 2 years is they've put all of their resources into building a team around him. And focusing on what he needs to do to learn best. I really like the move last year of bringing in Cole Beasley to have that consistent slot check down player who he can trust, where if he gets in trouble, he can just find Cole Beasley, boom, and it's an easy completion. And I like bringing in John Brown, but I think what I really like from this year was trading for Stephon Diggs. Do you feel the same way about Diggs, and what kind of impact can he have for this team?
So it's actually crazy to think about. I'm going to say something. It might sound like a hot take at first, but depending on how you grade wide receivers, in terms of top 3 wide receivers, I think the Bills actually have the best trio in the NFL. And I know Buffalo skill positions, no one ever really thinks about it. Um, Cole Beasley, Stephon Diggs, and John Brown are all in the top 15 in separation per route run. And with Josh Allen, it's kind of a tale of 2 years. His rookie year, they gave it was Andre Holmes, Kelvin Benjamin, who I think Booger McFarland had the famous line, he's a grandma's cupcake away from a tight end. They could not separate. They were just big bodies. And the idea was, well, Josh Allen isn't accurate with the ball. So let's just give him a big target with a big wingspan so they can go and get it. But then they realized that wasn't actually the way. That's not how that actually works.
Yeah, Zay Jones wasn't going to work out for you.
No, Zay Jones was a terrible pick at the beginning. Brandon Beane has done a great job of trading up for players. That was a miss, and I think he even knows that. Well, he also wasn't there for that one. That was Sean McDermott, but that's besides the point. Cole Beasley, as you were mentioning before, always open. Stephon Diggs is a bona fide number one. And John Brown is not just the go route receiver that everyone thought he was with Arizona. They tried the 1 year in Baltimore. He's not that. He's actually just a really good route runner. The deeper analytics would have told you that he was a really good route runner. It's just that sometimes blockhead coaches don't really see it that way. Brian Dable has done a great job of implementing that this year. Cole Beasley was open. You saw it on Thanksgiving. He was always open. John Brown got open a bunch. He shredded some teams. And then they still use Dawson Knox, who's an up and coming tight end, who had the misfortune of having A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf as his wideouts at Ole Miss with Swag Kelly at the quarterback, where he never caught it. He didn't catch a touchdown his senior year, or I think it was any of the years if I'm remembering that right. But he's a really good talent, and they got him in the 3rd round. Devin
He also
Singletary.
had Evan Ingram in his way too. That didn't help him
Right.
out.
Exactly. So I mean, they did a really good job scouting. They got him in the 3rd round. Devin Singletary is a really good running back. I mean, personally, I think running backs are worthless, but that's besides the point. They're dime a dozen. You can pick them up anywhere.
You should listen to our Christian McCaffrey episode. You'll love it.
I mean, for fantasy, he's fantastic, but for practicality,
Not for that though.
Building it.
No.
There's nothing about it. And so, I like everything the Bills have done from the offensive line too, and they've consistent with their defense. How they've stayed on top of that. Losing Stephon Gilmore as well has just been a testament to Sean McDermott and everything that he's been able to do as coach. And it pains me a little bit as a Jets fan to give the Bills credit and to say nice things about anyone in the division. But they've done what I've wanted the Jets to do. So it's like, oh, this is what they should be doing. Good for them. But it's hard to see that for a division rival.
It's hard for you to see it as a division rival, but it's got to be a little refreshing to watch it happen. Be like, see, this does work. Just fuck it. This, you know what I mean? And I'm sure Buffalo Bills fans, much like Bengal fans, have banged your head against the wall for years wanting a certain change. And as a Bengal fan, I feel like I've finally gotten my change. As a Bills fan, I feel like you've finally gotten your change. I feel like your team and your franchise has finally turned a corner in terms of championship expectations. I said it in a few episodes ago, you are my dark horse to make a Super Bowl run. I'm very into the Buffalo Bills this year. I loved the way they drafted. I liked majority of the free agent signings. I do not like Josh Norman. It's just never going to happen. I think that guy's absolute trash. But whatever. I think you drafted a really smart quarterback in Jake Fromm. I'm not saying Jake Fromm is a superstar at all, but I think you have a decent backup now and options if Josh Allen doesn't work, because let's be honest, he's not perfect, as to your point before. Yeah, man. I'm in on Bills Mafia this year, dude. I'm with you guys here. It seems like it'll be a really fun ride for you.
What's the ceiling for the Bills in your opinion, Reid? Where's the furthest they can get? Are they ready to compete for a Super Bowl, or is it just an extended run in the playoffs?
Their ceiling is Super Bowl. So they actually have a really large they have a wide variance on what it is. They could either be 13-3 and home field advantage throughout the playoffs and Super Bowl contender, or this team is 5-11 and we're talking about, do you sign Cam Newton? Or do you pick up Cam Newton halfway through the year? What's Trey Lance looking like at North Dakota State this year? Um, and I say that, and I think there's a lot of perception that Bills Mafia and Bills fans are diehard Josh Allen. If you follow on social media, all the talking heads like, "Oh my God, Bills Mafia is the worst thing. They're brain dead. They think Josh Allen's a savior." I actually think it's a little bit different this time around. This isn't the JP Lossman. This isn't the Trent Edwards.
Yeah.
This isn't Brian Fitzpatrick. This is pretty much it is ride or die with Josh Allen. Josh Allen, that's why I said it's variance. It's whatever Josh Allen does is how far this team is going to go. Defense is very hit or miss year to year. You rarely see defenses be consistently awesome for long stretches of time. That's why you can't really say, oh, they have a great defense. Well, it's not really consistent. We thought the Bears were going to be amazing last year because their defense was so good 2 years ago, but it just takes one thing to fall apart, and then the whole defense is terrible.
But
So,
we've seen teams maintain within a top 10 range for a solid 4 to 6 years. Like one year
mhm,
they'll be 3, then they'll be 7, then they'll be 2. I feel like the Patriots have done that for what felt like a decade.
mhm.
Consistently a great defense. Was it always one? No, but uh, yeah.
The thing with the Patriots defense too, just from my observation, is that they are a very good scoring defense, but they give up a lot of yards normally. Last year was kind of the exception to that, where they were just an all-around good defense for the first half of the year, and then, like you said earlier, Reid kind of fell off towards the end as the competition got a little bit better. But like what I've seen from the Bills is they've been pretty consistent. Like Justin was saying, from 1 to 10. Is that all just Sean McDermott? Is it the players that they have? What is that?
I think it's a combination. I would say Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier have done a really good job.
Yeah.
I think they have, at this point, they have a bona fide young superstar at each level of the defense. So defensive line, linebacker, and secondary. So you have Ed Oliver at defensive tackle, who, I mean, he was my number 2 rated player last year coming out of the draft, and he fell to 9. I still can't believe the Lions took TJ Hawkinson, but whatever. The You have Tremaine Edmonds, who still I don't think is eligible to go buy a beer because he's underage.
Maybe
He's got
tomorrow.
two. He's got maybe tomorrow. Well, places aren't open anymore, but Um, and then you have Trey White, who is probably a top 3 corner in the NFL right now. And they have when McDermott first came in, he brought in 2 underrated free agents, Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. A safety duo is really underrated, and a really good safety duo kind of fills a lot of holes that your defense may have. They can fill in at a big nickel or a safety spot, and then they can cover the secondary issues as well. So they cover 2/3 of your defensive system. And Poyer and Hyde are really good. So I think it's a combination of both the coaching, and then I think part of it is luck. Um, the Bengals game last year, they were starting to get shredded at the end of the game by Andy Dalton, and all that what saved them was I think Tyler Boyd had some butterfingers, and a pass sailed over and it fell into Trey White's lap. There were
It's true.
Titans
It
game.
happened.
The Titans game, they kept Tennessee missed 4 field goals that game. Um, so while I think the Bills had a really good year last year and their schedule was really light, I think it's a little bit pause for concern. Um, I I don't want to make it seem like Bills Mafia isn't like that excited about the team. We really are, but I think they're also reserved in understanding. Okay, a lot of the things kind of went our way. That's not normally going to happen every year. So what happens on a year where that doesn't go that way. And the
especially
schedule
with a
is tough.
quarterback as you have.
Yes, exactly. And for Josh Allen, and I think Bills Mafia isn't as in on Josh Allen as well. They're willing to say, listen, if he doesn't take his step this year, forget it, move on, go find somebody else. I mean, I had a radical idea. I know there was a story about Seattle tried trading Russell Wilson for the number 1 pick to Cleveland a couple years ago when Cleveland took Baker Mayfield. If I'm the Bills, I give up Josh Allen in a second after this year if he doesn't work out for Russell. Would you trade Josh Allen in the 2nd round pick for Russell Wilson?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. For that team with that receiving core. Yeah.
And then you start to think about it. Does Seattle say no to it because of the contract situation? One's on a rookie deal, the other
That's what I was thinking about.
$a year, and that's where it's kind of cool to think. Well, what does Brandon Beane do? Because he's pretty savvy. I don't think he's ever lost a trade. He's pretty well. He's done pretty well as a GM, and he's been really savvy.
You definitely won that Cordy Glenn trade a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck me, wow.
So the Cordy Glenn trade, my favorite one might be the Russell Bodine trade. I don't even know if you guys remember that one. He traded a backup center to New England for a 5th round pick, only for the guy to get cut 2 weeks later. It was actually a remarkable trade to happen.
Your backup center was my starting center for 4 years. I just want to put that into a broad perspective of the life of a Bengal fan. There you go.
So I think there's a lot of trust in Beane and McDermott. There's a hesitation with Josh Allen. But if he does it, they're all in.
Yeah, Josh Allen is so interesting to me because he shows flashes of just absolute excellence that nobody really has done since Cam Newton's MVP year, just from the athleticism that he's able to show. But then at the same time, he shows the other side of him, and that towards the end of that game against Houston, that playoff game, I had no idea what he was doing. Where he was he was trying to make a play, so I get that, but he I don't know what it is about taking care of the ball, but he just seems to be allergic to it sometimes. He just gets crazy. What does he have to do to improve that? What can he do to improve that?
Stick him.
Yeah. That's where the hesitation comes in, because he's never shown that ability to fix that. He's never really shown the ability to take care of the ball. The first 5 weeks of the season, so the first 4 weeks, he got injured in the game against the Patriots. He had 3 picks in the game. He was terrible. Yet I still maintain if he didn't get knocked out with a concussion, the Bills would have won that game at home against New England. He's out. I believe he actually came back the next week. But after that game, he actually was one of the least turnover-prone quarterbacks in the NFL. I think he only had 4 picks after that point. A lot of it came down to Brian Daboll and the offensive coordinator really hiding things. They drafted Zach Moss in the 3rd round. I loved Zach Moss coming out of Utah. I think they're going to do a lot of running the ball and a lot of play action. They're going to do a lot of things where it's not going to be just straight dropbacks. In fact, I really don't expect him to pass while under center all that much this year. You could see a lot of pistol action where it gives him more chance to read the defense, to see what's going on. And then Daboll might only call half the field for him, where he says, you have 2 reads. If it's not there, you run, you big dummy. Because he can do that. And that's something to take advantage of at this point. But in terms of taking care of the ball, the lateraling it in the playoffs, I mean, listen, I'll say this. I don't know if he's good, but he's entertaining.
Yeah. Oh.
And that was my biggest.
Definitely.
The lack of primetime games is, I don't care whether it's a good play or a bad play, but guess what? It's a play, and it's better than watching Duck Hodges on the Pittsburgh Steelers 6 times a year in primetime games. It's better than watching Ezekiel Elliott get 25 carries and the Cowboys lose by 2 touchdowns because they don't understand they should just have Dak Prescott throw it almost every play. It's a lot better than that stuff. So,
Reid, let me ask you a question, because I could clearly tell you're a very knowledgeable football fan. You paid Dak Prescott?
Yes, absolutely.
Confidently.
You're
You're comfortable making Dak Prescott the highest paid quarterback in the NFL?
Yep.
Why?
Absolutely. Because he's top 5 in almost every quarterback category. He's actually really good. What hamstrings him is he has to hand the ball off because they paid Ezekiel Elliott. So there's two things. I would pay Dak Prescott. Then I get in the time machine and go back and not sign Ezekiel Elliott to $14 million a year or whatever it was that he signed to,
Mm-hmm.
because he's not worth the money. Dak Prescott, worth the money. Ezekiel Elliott, absolutely not.
Mm.
In fact, I'll even go one step further. Troy Pollard, probably a better running back than Ezekiel Elliott for the money he's worth. Way better value. He averaged 5.4 or 5.6 yards per carry last year. He's really good.
Yeah, he is.
He should get the ball more. But they paid Ezekiel Elliott, so there's an obligation to pay.
Well, you paid Ezekiel Elliott also because you paid the entire offensive line. If you paid the entire offensive line, you paid if you pay for the wheels, you might as well pay for the car, right? So and that's what they did. They paid for the car.
Well,
they don't have a time machine, and they have Amari Cooper as well, who they also signed to an egregious amount of money.
How is Dallas not over the cap ridiculous? I don't get it.
Nobody on defense gets paid. I think Sean Lee has been taking pay cuts for years because Jerry Jones just keeps giving him a job because he plays 4 games a year. I mean, like it's
pretty close.
It's got to be. Sean Lee is always quoted on every broadcast as a great linebacker when he plays. When healthy, he's one of the best. Great, man. You've played 16 games in 9 years. Awesome. But regardless, I actually disagree. I would offer Dak Prescott in that middle. I would give him Jimmy Garoppolo money because that is what he has earned to me. He has earned $28 to $30 million. He hasn't shown any playoff prowess. He has lost to a lot of really great teams. He only really beats the NFC East. And granted, it's not all on him. Like this is an entire team sport. He's had a bonehead of a coach for years. We can all agree on that. But
Still has one.
At the same time, he is the quarterback, and he should be able to make up for this some way, shape, or form. And I feel like he drops the ball a lot. Not in terms of turnovers, in terms of literally, figuratively, he drops the ball when it matters.
I mean, I agree with that. The reason I would also pay Dak right now is because what you're gonna have to pay him after this year is gonna hurt. You could probably get him for. I know there were talks about $45 million a year. I don't really buy that. He's probably gonna sink in around $35 million. And the reason I say you pay that is contracts are only going to go up with the new CBA. The salary cap's going to go up because it's not really about the raw dollar amount. It's about percentage of the cap that somebody gets paid. That's really where the concern is, because the NFL prints money, so who cares, right? If someone makes $100 million a year, but the cap's $1 billion, does anyone really care that he makes 10% of the cap? No, that's actually a good value for a quarterback. But if I'm the Cowboys management and I know that Dak Prescott is in a contract year, he's playing on a franchise tag, he's throwing to Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, who's going to really – he's the Chris Godwin of this year. It's just that he keeps being overshadowed by Amari Cooper on national broadcast. Michael Gallup's a better wideout than Amari Cooper, and that's going to get shown this year. And CeeDee Lamb, he's going to throw to those three. You can forget the tight end position. They just have to go 3 wide, blocking tight end and Ezekiel Elliott just for distractions. Dak Prescott's going to put up about 5,000 yards passing this year. Because then all of a sudden, what are you going to pay him after next year? You're probably going to have to pay him close to $40 million a year, which is where it gets interesting because then it runs up against the Mahomes contract. If Mahomes gets paid $45 million a year, well, Dak Prescott can sit there and say, I'm worth 42. And he's not wrong.
I heard what they're talking about with Mahomes is structuring it a little bit like differently than any contract has ever been structured, where his salary would be determined as a percentage of the cap. Like when it goes up, his contract would stay, I'm going to be 23% of the cap, let's say, just for argument. And it's going to go up and his salary is going to stay like that. I don't think a deal has ever been done like that. But that's what I think Mahomes and his team is looking for, or that's what people are saying that he should look for. But you bring up a great point because there's the the fellow down in Houston too, my guy, Deshaun Watson, who I'm sure he's sitting back watching everything going on with Dak Prescott right now, going to wait for Mahomes to get his deal too, because he's in no rush. If he doesn't sign with Houston, he's going to sign somewhere else for that money. So I think he's in a great spot where he's rooting for Dak to get whatever he can, because then Mahomes is going to supersede that a ridiculous amount. And then whoever, Deshaun, I think, is going to be the third of those guys to get a deal, not because he doesn't deserve it, but because he's going to just sit back and watch to see what happens, because his team has no leverage over him.
And Bill O'Brien.
Yeah.
And Bill O'Brien.
Just awful.
Bill O'Brien's an absolute moron. So,
Bill O'Brien, not a fan of the pod. Not a fan of the pod.
Right? A list of any player or coach, somebody who's wronged me in any way or who I just don't respect. Right now, the top two are Bill O'Brien, and then Dan Orlovsky is back on the list because he's he ran out of the back of the end zone. And I don't know. He's on my list. He loves Sam Darnold, which I appreciate, but he says some stupid things sometimes, and he's just on my list. But Bill O'Brien, we are an anti-Bill O'Brien podcast here. We hate everything he does. I can't think of a good move that he's done, and I'm actually worried that Houston is not going to sign Deshaun Watson, and then he's going to go sign in New England. And I'm going to end up having to hate the guy that I love the most. And
you both have made some crazy New England future quarterback hot takes here. Ooh.
I don't think it's a hot take. Deshaun Watson was the betting favorite at one point earlier in the offseason to be the New England starting quarterback next year. So I don't think that's a hot take. I think that's just potentially what could happen. But I think worst case scenario, I'm a disaster kind of guy. That's what happens when you're a Jets fan for as long as I've been a Jets fan.
That's a standard AFC East, I guess, tendency is to fall back.
Hey guys,
I completely
all
understand.
fans of shitty teams. Like let's just call a spade here. All right, like none of us are really better than the other between the three.
No, I think you can't really argue who's been better because they've
all been pretty bad.
They've all been pretty fucking bad.
Yes.
So what can we look for from the Bills for the rest of the offseason? Is there any chance that they go for any of the guys, the June 1 cuts, so to speak? Are there any veterans that they're going to be targeting?
I would say that their roster is pretty solidified. I mean, I know you guys talked about hating the Josh Norman signing. I think he's just there to compete with Levi Wallace. Also, Josh Norman's best years were when he was in a zone system, in a zone secondary. And that's what Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier would do. They have their corners run zone and their slot corners run man. So he would be on the outside, and he would be a little bit protected by the fact that he would have Jordan Poyer or Micah Hyde, and then they'd probably fade over a nickel corner onto his side as well. It also helps that Tremaine Edmonds and Matt Milano at the linebacker position are absolute freaks of nature in pass coverage. They can eat a lot of space. In terms of offense, I don't think there's anybody else. Their offense is pretty solidified. Fantasy-wise, that is one of my favorite offenses. Real life-wise, I'm a little bit hesitant on Josh Allen, but that's just what it is. I think he's a top 5 fantasy quarterback this year. For the fantasy followers here, he's electric. He is just his worst game is better than a lot of quarterbacks because of his ability to run and willingness to do it in the red zone, so to speak.
That's why I started starting Kyler Murray so consistently, is that even when he would have a bad game, his bad game is still 16 points a game. And I'm still going to bank it on that every day. And I'm such a big Kyler Murray fan, not in fantasy football, just in life. I think he's a fantastic quarterback, a great athlete. Yeah. So if we're talking fantasy football real quick, I'm all in on the Kyler Murray train this year if I can get my hands on him.
I did just want to mention we did get that 10-minute warning thing from Zoom about a minute ago.
We'll pay eventually.
We'll see what happens. But Reid, I'd love to get your opinion on our teams. Real quick. So, how do you feel about the Bengals offseason? From what you've seen or may have heard, what do you expect from them? And then we can transition into you talked a little bit about the Jets, but we can get into that a little bit more.
So I'll start with the Bengals. I actually like them a lot this year. I do a bunch of best ball leagues, and Joe Burrow and Josh Allen are my two quarterbacks. Joe Burrow, I was telling this to somebody. Joe Burrow is going to have the year that the Browns thought Brandon Weeden was going to have when they drafted him. He is the older guy who's coming in, and they think there's not going to be a learning curve. Dude's going to come in right away. He's going to toss for 4,200 yards, 30 touchdowns, 11 or 12 picks, and he's going to lead them to 9 or 10 wins. Joe Burrow, I think, is that good, and I think he's helped the difference between him and Brandon Weeden. Obviously, Joe Burrow is way better than Brandon Weeden because Brandon Weeden was garbage, and he was just helped out by the fact that Oklahoma State had a
Just
loaded offense
exactly. Just fires with Justin Blackman, Justin Gatling. Yeah.
all day. Joe Burrow has AJ Green, Tyler Boyd. I will never draft Joe Mixon, and I'll never say anything good about Joe Mixon because stuff. But they've talented all over the offense. Their offensive line is the only thing that's going to hold them back. I think their defense is actually pretty good. And they drafted 2 linebackers, so they in the 3rd round. So they should
3
have.
linebackers technically.
Well, sorry, I thought I only remembered 2, but yeah, I think their defense is going to be fine. I think their offense has the potential to really explode this year. It comes down to whether Zach Taylor is also the 11 personnel one-trick gimmick that Sean McVay was, or whether he actually has a scheme that he can run that works. But that's the only thing that I could see slowing down Cincinnati. I just like Joe Burrow. I love him a lot, and AJ Green actually being healthy is going to go a long way. And Tyler Boyd's really good. And I wouldn't surprise me if Justin Ross pops off. Or sorry,
John Ross.
yeah, John Ross. Sorry,
I got you.
Justin Ross is the kid from Clemson who just tore his ACL or had the injury that he's out for the year. Sorry, wrong Ross.
The only Justin I've ever met that spells his name with a Y for the record. So there's also that.
How about that?
How about that? I like this guy. He's a Bengal fan, man. Let's bring him back. Shit.
We'll bring you back. We'll definitely bring you back. But
wow, no, I could totally agree with that, man. I am very excited. Zach Taylor is, to me, the X factor here, and the offensive line. They seem really confident in that offensive line, and it's like you kind of have to trust them because they're not going to improve it at this point. They're not going to sign any more free agents. It doesn't seem like they'll sign Larry Walford, which they 1,000% should.
Mm-hmm.
So should the Jets, but it doesn't seem like they will. So we're just banking that it's not happening at this point. But there were a lot of times when you watch Bengal games last year and plays that should have gone well. So you saw the scheme was there, was things that worked, but it was just Andy Dalton threw a ball over John Ross's head, or Dalton threw a ball past Tyler Boyd, or you started Ryan Finley for 4 games because you really wanted to tank for Joe Burrow, and let's just call it what it is now. Yeah, I think it's a lot Zach Taylor, but as I've said before, extremely confident and comfortable with him, and I'm excited to see what he does. And now, what do you think about these damn Jets, man?
So, the Jets, there's some on local radio, they brought up a hypothetical. I don't know if you guys had seen this or not. They brought up a hypothetical of where would the Bills be if they took Sam Darnold instead of Josh Allen? Or would Josh Allen still, at this point, have the better statistical numbers or the better career so far of the 2 quarterbacks? And it's actually kind of funny because you would think that everyone would be like, oh, well, Josh Allen's just so much better. A lot of the overwhelming consensus is if Sam Darnold was in Buffalo, this team would be the betting favorite to win the AFC. They would just openly be the betting favorite. I think Sam Darnold was really talented coming out of school. I love the underlying numbers. His CPOE was over 10, which is fantastic and a really good indicator of success at the NFL level. I think he ran into a bad offensive coach, a bad offensive system his rookie year. And then he brings in Adam Gase in year 2, which, listen, there's only 2 coaches that I will openly bet the house against. One of them is Adam Gase.
Who's the other one?
Hugh Jackson.
Nice.
Does not matter what team Hugh Jackson is on. I will always bet against it.
Nice.
Point spread doesn't matter. Bet against Hugh Jackson. You want to give more points? Yeah. I just think the Jets are completely relying on a patchwork offensive line to keep Sam Darnold alive, and I'm not sure it's going to work. I like Mekhi Becton a lot coming out of Louisville. He's more of a run blocker than he's a pass blocker. And I think Adam Gase is not the answer. And I think they would have actually been better off cutting bait after 1 year.
I thought he should have been fired if they started 0-6, whatever they started last year.
Yep.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I understand that they went 9-7. They managed to put up 17 points against the Bills team that was starting fourth string wideouts at corner because they didn't want to get injured for the playoffs. I'm worried that Sam Darnold's going to get lost. And if you're a quarterback and you don't turn it on by the end of year 2 or even year 3, being generous, you don't have it and you're not going to be successful. There is no his 7th year in the league, he finally turns around. That's not a thing. So I would say I'm skeptical of the Jets. I think the thing that really has to happen is Adam Gase leaves or is let go from the position.
Yeah, we're totally in agreement there. I think similar to the Bills, the Jets season really relies and is on the shoulder of Sam Darnold, and hopefully all his he stays okay. He's had a couple freak injuries where he got spiked in Miami and missed a couple games, and then he got mono last year, missed 2 games. So those things obviously stunted his growth, but I think the thing that stunted his growth the most was Adam Gase and just what he was able to do or not do for him. You mentioned Mekhi Becton being a better run blocker than a pass blocker. Totally think you're right, but my guess is that they're going to put him in pass blocking situations just because that's the kind of coach that Adam Gase is. I've tried to be positive about the Jets as a whole, but Adam Gase has made it tougher for me to believe that. But we have about 1 minute left. Reid, thank you for joining us. Where can we see your work? If you want to share your Twitter handle or what you've been working on.
Yeah, of course. So you can find me. My Twitter handle is it's ReidCash17. So it's ReidKash17. And I do some writing. Mainly, I do mock draft analysis and fantasy football best ball analysis at Razzball. So that's Razzball, RAZZBALL.com.
Yeah, we'll definitely make sure to shout those out. And thank you so much for joining us. And we're sorry that we're a little bit rushed here. We're just trying to get everything in. We're not paying members of Zoom just yet, but
no worries, guys.
For the Bills. And that's it for the 11th episode of the Dig Route. For Justin, I am TJ. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.